Our French political affairs editor is here with us now. And Mark, some of the notable parts of the bill that I picked up on there: a ban on homeschooling for children except in the cases of severe health problems, and any institution that seeks public funds will have to sign a charter pledging to uphold values of secularism. They were a couple of things that stuck out for me. What about you?
Yes, I mean, first of all, before getting into the details, because it's quite a detailed speech in terms of policy content. I mean, he's laying out all the steps. The words are very important because Emmanuel Macron has been dithering essentially on how to name things and how to address them. Today, he says, okay, we're going to do some straight talking and some straight actions as well. So the straight talking, he said, the problem is not secularism in France. He said, this is our values, this is not the problem. The problem is what he described as Islamist separatism. He repeated the word several times. He also talked about radical Islamism, and he added that this was something that needed to be addressed head on. And obviously, it's a very difficult issue, a sensitive issue, because there is, as he said, a willingness to address the issue head on, but on the other side, not stigmatize the Muslim community.
And he said, we're not trying to ban religion as well. He said that.
No, he said, we're not trying to ban religion. We're essentially trying to organize against what he described in much detail as a secretive plot by some radical Islamists to essentially attract, especially young people, who feel disenfranchised, and attract them to what he deems as an ideological core that is contrary to the values of the Republic. And he says we need to bring those children back into the fold. And he said France has also made some major mistakes. He said we didn't address the issues, especially of suburban areas where people were essentially put together, and we didn't mix, quote unquote, them enough. And the place where he's speaking from, Le Miro, is an illustration of that. He said we failed on this issue. We have to know this. He also talked about the colonial past not being addressed head on. And he said this whole mixture of things has led to the current situation. And then he laid out what you described as measures in school, trying essentially...
Yeah, let's talk about some of those measures, because he did go into quite a lot of detail about how this bill, if it passes Parliament, will work.
He also wanted to address the criticism that he hadn't worked on the issue. He said, we worked for 3 years. Here's what we're going to do. And just one important element, this bill is going to be presented before the cabinet on December 9th.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be earlier on. The last word was November. Now it's December. It's going to go before the cabinet and then before Parliament. So there's no way it's going to be voted before the end of this year.
So it could be law by next year, essentially.
It could be law, but that's the objective, obviously.
And what about some of these concrete measures then?
Well, he said, we have to address the issue, and he called it a Republican awakening. So he said that, there are several pillars. First of all, he said we need to address the issues of people's attitude in public transportation, or when they go to a swimming pool, or when they go to the doctor. Obviously, he's saying, women refusing to shake hands or to share a swimming pool with men or so on. He said, we'll give the prefects in the regions a possibility really to suspend some decision by municipalities to allow separate times for women in swimming pools and so on. He said, if we feel this is essentially feeding this separatism, will ask the prefect to suspend the measures allowing different hours, for instance, in swimming pools.
What was he saying about bus drivers?
Well, he said some bus drivers apparently, and this was reported, sometimes made some remarks about the way some women were dressed. Passengers, yes, saying, essentially they were not dressed enough or showing too much flesh. Right. Essentially, it's a very difficult issue. He didn't want to essentially call out people, but this is what he was addressing. Then he said associations. He said there are many associations that can be set up very easily. He said we need more control exactly about what they're doing, where the money is coming from, and we'll have them sign essentially a chart whereby they will claim that they abide by the laws of the Republic. the heart of the issue, and you can feel it's important for him, maybe because his wife used to be a teacher, is school. He said, this is really where we need to fight. And he said, I'm going to announce a very radical measure. Going to school will be mandatory as of 3-year-old. And as you rightly pointed out, homeschooling will really be an exception. This will not be allowed because he
only
said,
in the case of severe physical
yes, because he said some
illnesses.
children, he gave a lot of examples, were essentially not going to school or going to school but not to some music classes, for instances, and essentially going to parallel structures with no control whatsoever. And so he said we need to fight this. We also need to ensure that private schools should be monitored. He said, there's no way we're going to prevent people from going to private school, choosing private schools, but we need to have a tighter lid on their financing, especially when it comes from other countries.
Right.
And he also said that we need to build a structure for Islam in France. This has been an ongoing saga for years.
Which is a huge topic. And I mean, it was interesting to hear him talk about Islam in those terms and just say, you know, this is a religion in crisis around the world. Some people might be somewhat offended by that.
Yes, but some people also might say, okay, that's true. He said, you know, he took the example of Tunisia, for instance, saying, you know, this is not... It was a way for him to say this is not France going against the Muslims or the Muslim world. This is an issue of radical Islam that we've seen in other countries through terrorism, through tensions that we see. And so, yes, obviously, but he was quite, precise. He denounced women in full veil, tending to children and so on. So obviously, this is going to annoy part of the Muslim community, and also some politicians. We heard the leader of the far left, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, before the speech saying, instead of attending the European Union summit taking place today, Macron decides to take time to make a speech against Muslims. So obviously what he's saying today is not going to please everyone. It's probably going to please people on the right, on the far right, because he will not say so, but he has the 2022 election in sight, and he probably knows that this is going to be an important issue. We've seen it with the Charlie Hebdo trial or the attack last week. And so it's a very, very difficult line. He admitted that it took time because, you know, you're essentially walking on eggs on this issue.
Walking on eggshells, absolutely, very much so. You hit the nail on the head there, Marc. Thank you very much indeed, Marc Perelman there.